Hello, my wonderful Algebra 2 people. This material that we're looking at, even though it says a lesson 11C, this is actually chapter 10 material. But you needed to know Pascal's triangle, and I just started it right here. Remember, the ones are always outside on the diagonal, and then you get this number right here by adding the 2 right here. So you can see we got 3 here because 1 plus 2 is 3. So you're going to want to continue this triangle down, and you're going to want to know this triangle because it's real quick. And that is a 6. I'm looking through my phone, so it's kind of hard to see. And let's just go down for a little while. See, 6 and 4 is 10, and 10. And that would give me 5 and 1. And you could do one more. I can't really remember how far it's going to ask us to go, but 10 and 5 is 15. And that's 20. And that's 15. And 6 and 1. Okay, this would obviously keep going down forever and ever, but this is what we're going to need and use for doing these problems. Okay, so I'm actually, number 11, the very first one is so tricky because it's got a fraction in it and it's just gross. So let's start with something a little easier. Let us start with number 12, which is to the 5th power. Now, remember, because it's to the 5th power, we will end up having 6 terms. There's always one more term than it is raised to this power. So, for example, this one's going to have 5 terms when I'm all done. Okay, since this is to the 5th power, I'm going to be using this row because it has a 5 on it. Okay, that's the easiest way. So I'm going to write this down. 1, 5, 10, 10, 5, 1. Okay, now I don't keep doing this for every single one, but you do want to keep this handy. Since this is to the 5th power, my very first term is going to be, remember, this is your A, and this is your B. So I kind of come in here and I write, okay, this is going to be A to the 5th, my A to the 4th, A to the 3rd, A to the 2nd, A to the 1st, no A's. Okay, and then I go backwards. This is going to be B to the 5th, B to the 4th. Gosh, my eyes are getting old. B to the 3rd, B to the 2nd, B to the 1st, no B's. Realize that your exponents, since this is the 5th power, they always add up to 5. So let me zoom in right here. But can you see that this is 4 and 1 is 5, and 3 and 2 adds up to 5? So your exponents will always add up to 5. So that's a nice way to check yourself. Okay, so we're going to expand this. So this says my first value, I'm just going to have a 1 out front here, so I'm not going to even worry about my 1. But I'm going to take my first term and take it to the 5th power. So I'm going to take my first term, which is x, and take it to the 5th power. Okay, and then we always add all these together. Then I'm going to start with a 5, and I'm going to take my first term and take it to the 4th power. So it's going to be an x, but this time it's going to be to the 4th power. And then you're going to take your second term, your b, times b. Now, this is really boring because it's just a 1, but to show my work, I'm going to put it in. Okay, now for my third term, it starts with a 10, and then I'm going to take my first term and take it to the 3rd power. So it's going to be x to the 3rd. I'm going to take my b to the 2nd power. So let me just say this. Do you see how my exponents are adding up to 5? 3 plus 2 is 5. So I can keep double checking myself. Okay, my next term, start with a 10. It's going to be my first term to the 2nd power. See how it's going down? X to the 5th, x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, x to the 2nd. And it's going to be my second term to the 3rd power. And they're going up. Then I start it with a 5, x to the 1st, because it says take your first term to the 1st. Take your second term to the 4th, so it would be 1 to the 4th. And then last but not least, take your last term to the 5th power. So 1 to the 5th. Okay, now honestly, since this is a 1, I probably wouldn't even be messing with it, but I'm trying to show my work so you can see what I did, so that when we do a more interesting one, it'll make sense. Okay, 5 times 1 is 5. 1 squared is still 1. 10 times 1 is 10. Still 1, so boring, this one. Still 1, so 5x plus 1, because 1 to the 5th is 1. So that right there is my answer to number 12. Okay, no big deal. Now, when you get ready to do number 15, this should actually be review from the previous chapter because it's only to the 3rd power. But let's review real quick before we get to that wicked one, how we're going to do that. We would take, since this is a 3, we're going to go with this row. So we're going to do 1, 3, 3, 1. So I actually write that 1, 3, 3, 1. So I do that. You'll see me do that on every single one of my answers so I don't forget my coefficients out in front. Since this is to the 3rd power, I know this is going to be a to the 3rd, a to the 2nd, a to the 1st, no A's. And then I go to this. I go backwards. It's going to be b to the third, b to the second, b to the first. No b's. Remember, your exponents are going to add up to 3. So you can see they always add up to 3. So just a little hint, you'll know you got it right. So this says take my first term. Your coefficient is going to be a 1, so I don't even really care about it, but I'm going to take my first term, which is a 4x, and I'm going to take it to the third power. Then I'm going to start my second term with a 3. I'm going to take my first term and square it. My first term is a 4x. I'm going to square it. Take my second term to the first power. Now be careful, it's not just a 6, it is a negative 6, so be careful right there. Okay, for my third term, it starts with a 3, and it says to take the first term to the first power. So that's 4x. If you want to write to the first power, that's fine. And then my sleeves are catching my second term to the second power. And again, look how my little exponents add up to 3 since I want it to the third power. And last but not least, it says take my last term and take it to the third power, which is a negative 6 to the third. Okay, I have no problem using your calculator. Hit in 4 to the third if you must. It's no big deal. I'm not asking you to know what that is, but that is 64. So we get 64x to the third. Now, here's what you got to be careful. Watch your signs, but this is what, 16? 4 squared is 16. Hit this in your calculator real quick. Ugh, that's a gross one. So I'm going to pull over my calculator real quick. I can see that's 3 times, I can do that one in my head, that's 16 times, I'm not going to worry about my negative, but that's negative 288 x to the second. Ugh. Making sure I multiplied that together right. And I think I did. Okay. Here, that gives me 36 times 12. Okay, you can just hit in your calculator 3 times 4, and then however you want to do it. Remember, you can multiply in any order you want, but I'm going to hit my calculator 12 times 36, which is what, 432? I would say again, watch your signs. Since this is squared, it's going to take care of that, because remember, 2 negatives is going to make that positive. Here, this is only 1 negative, so it stays negative. So let's do one more here, and then I'll show you something else. Now I'm going to take negative 6 to the third, which I happen to know that's 216. And that's a 3, which is odd. So my negatives are going to stay negative. And another little hint, if you've got a minus sign in here, your signs are going to switch. No, it's positive, negative, negative. They just kind of switch like that. So that would be my answer right there, which we've kind of done ones like that before. Okay. What if you get something like this? I'm leaving that fraction one for very last. So if that's the only one you care about, just fast forward to the end of the video. But this one's just doesn't want me to expand the whole thing, which these are my favorite. This is something like more like what you would see on the ACT. Something like this where they only want you to find the one term. And so I want the third term, but this is to the 5th power. So over here on my little Pascal's triangle, I know I'm going to use this one. It's the 5th power. I want this one that has a 5 in it. So it's going to be the 1, 5. So again, I still come over here and I go 1, 5, 10, 10, 5, 1. I want the third term. 1, 2, 3. So it's going to start with my coefficient of my 10. Okay? Remember, if you must, that this is a to the 5th, a to the 4th. This one's going to be a to the 3rd, b to the 2nd. Remember, these two have to add up to 5. So that's what I'm going to do right there. So I'm going to take my 10. I'm going to take my first term, which is 2x, take it to the 3rd power. And then I'm going to take my second term, negative 5, to the 2nd power. And then that will be it. So that's 8. 2 to the 3rd is 8. So I've got 10 times 8 times 25. Hit it in your calculator however you must. But let's see, what is that? I'm trying to think. What is that? Is that 2,000? And that would be what, x to the 3rd? Hit that in your calculator. Double check my math. That could be a little scary. Okay, this one wants the 5th term. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my 5th term right there. So I've got to be careful. Remember, if I'm doing this, this is a to the 5th, a to the 4th, a to the 3rd, a to the 2nd, a to the 1st, which means it would be b to the 4th, because these have to add up to 5. Remember? So I'm going to start with a 5. I'm going to take my first term, which is a 2x to the first power, but I'm going to take my second term, and there's a little glare there, and I apologize, to the fourth power. And that is not just a 5, be careful, it's a -5, but it's to the fourth power. Since this is even, I'm going to lose my negatives, which I love that. So I've got 5 times 2 is 10. 5 to the fourth is what, 625? So again, use your calculator. That's 6,250x. Don't forget your little x right there. So I like these when I only have to find one term and I don't have to expand the whole stinking thing. Okay, so let's do the wicked one, number 11, real quick. And you know what, before I do that one, I did notice this just wants the cube root of this. Okay, you might think this is really bad, but do you remember like how the square root of 16 is just boring 4? And I would say, why? Why is it 4? And I say, because 4 times 4 is 16. Or if I said, what is the cube root, I don't want to do the same one, of 27, you would say 3. And if I said why, you would say because 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. But the answer is just boring 3. Okay, if you ask me the cube root of this, I would say it's x plus 4. And you might say why? Well, I'll tell you why, because x plus 4 cubed would give me that. Okay, and you'd be like, how would I ever know that? Well, let me give you a little hint, just to keep it simple. What is the cube root of x to the third? X. What's the cube root of 64? 4. Why? Because 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. And I'm just telling you it works. So that's just easy. Don't make those hard. They're fast. All right, now to number 11. Whew. All right, this wants this to the fourth power. So since it's to the fourth power, I'm going to use this fourth row right here, which starts 1, 4, 6, 4, 1. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to write that. 1, let me make sure that's nice and clear. Ugh, and not a glare. Woo, that's pretty glarish. Why is it doing that all of a sudden? Okay, sorry. 1, 4, 6, 4, 1. And I know since this is the fourth power, this is going to be a to the fourth, a to the third, a to the second, a to the first. No a's. And then I go backwards. B to the fourth, b to the third, b to the second, b to the first. No b's. Okay, so here we go. My first coefficient is a 1. I don't even care. If you want to write down a 1, write down it. But I'm going to take my first term, which is a 1/2 x, and I'm going to take them to the fourth power, because that's what it says to do. And then I'm going to start my next coefficient with a 4. I'm going to take my first term, which is a 1/2 x, I'm going to take it to the third power, times my second term, which is -3b, to the first power. Again, notice how those add up to 4. All right, my next coefficient starts with a 6. I'm going to take my first term, which is a 1/2 x, and take it to the second power. And I'm going to take my second term, which is a -3b, and it's also to the second power. Ooh, look how those add up to 4. All right, my next term is a 4. It says take my first term, which is what? 1/2 x, to the first power, and then take my second term, -3b, to the third power. See it right there? Do you see how those add up to 4? And then last but not least, I take my last term, which is a -3b, to the fourth power. Okay, gross. This is no big deal. First of all, you should be able to do this one in your head. This one is not bad. If you know what 1 to the fourth is, which is 1, and 2 to the fourth, which is 16, you can get that. You should also be able to hit that in your calculator. Okay, in parentheses, you could put your 1/2 in parentheses and then stick it to the fourth power. All right, here's where I have no problem with you using your calculator. First of all, I can already see this is going to be negative, so I'm going to erase this right here. Remember when I taught you earlier about if this is a minus sign, my sign switch? I also can see this negative is to the first power, so I'm going to end up with 1 negative. But in your calculator, let me show you how to hit this real quick. First of all, I could know that this is 1/8 because 2 to the third is 8 and 1 to the third is 1. So I want to show you, if you can't do this in this, but you can hit this in your calculator. So let me turn my little calculator on. I'm going to show you how to do this in the calculator real quick. These calculators are amazing, but I just go down here, I'm going to hit 4 times, and then I hit my fraction bar, and I knew it was 1/8. Okay, if you don't know it's 1/8, but you hit 1, and then I arrow down, and I say it's an 8. and then I arrow over, and you can either hit in that it's a -3, which is what it is, or you can just hit in a 3 and know it's negative. And did I forget to hit in my times sign? That's okay. Look, I'm going to arrow over. I'm going to redo it. I'm going to hit in a times a -3. So that's okay. No big deal. And look what it gives me. It gives me that fraction of -3/2. So I'm not saying not to do it mentally, but I'm also saying if it gives you stress, don't worry about it. Notice that x to the third is still right there. Okay, so let's try it one more time in the calculator. I would show you, I would hit 6 times, I know this is 1/4. If you don't know it's 1/4, you can hit 1/2 times 1/2, okay? And I know that that's 9. So I just try to keep things a little simple in my calculator, but I would hit 6 times 1/4 times 9 in my calculator. And that, by the way, will reduce my fraction and everything for me, but it should give me 27/2. Try it in your calculator real quick. X squared. I just caught myself in a mistake. But look, this is b to the second. Did you catch my mistake over here? Did you see that b to the first? And I just totally ignored him. You know how I caught that? These exponents have to add up to 4. Look at them. 3 plus 1 is 4. There's a 4. Ugh. But that's okay. Caught myself. Okay, I do know this next sign is minus because remember when you subtract, your signs change. Even if I didn't remember that. Do you see how that negative is to the odd exponent? There's going to be an odd number of negatives, so it's going to be negative. I do know that this is 27 or -27. So you could hit in your calculator 4 times 1/2, which by the way is 2, times -27, however you want to do it, but you should get 27/2. Notice that's x to the first, b to the third, and again, notice those add up to 4. Plus, and -3 to the fourth, again, that's going to be positive because there's an even number of negatives, but that would be an 81 b to the fourth. And there you've got it. They can't get any more wicked than that, surely.